You guys want to start your recordings, then we'll clap.
Yeah.
Yep. Start
Hold on.
now.
Hold on.
Wait.
Oh, hang on just a second.
All right, everybody panic, and then we'll start.
Act like we've never done
Hold
this.
on.
I had to switch inputs. I had been recording audio earlier, so
I'm just so
Give me
comforted
just
that
a
I'm on
second.
this
Audio
with
clips.
3 America's Next Top podcasters.
None of us can do it.
And we're all like,
things.
crap. Oh my god.
And this is
Stop it.
and this is every week that this happens too,
Yeah, it makes
which
me
is
feel
even better.
I spent
Mhm.
2 hours listening to audio stuff on Incomptech looking for something for YouTube videos. I am fried.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's
perfect.
see.
All right.
All right,
So
I'm
the-
recording now.
Okay.
Finally.
Yes,
All right, we're recording.
recording has started.
All
And
right.
it's working.
1, 2, 3, clap. 1, 2, 3, clap. All right, got it. Now let's kick this sucker in the teeth and do this show. All right, everybody, here we go. Starting with the recap.
Previously on Those Were the Days.
All right, Amy, what'd you think?
So believe it or not, I hadn't seen it before watching.
They dove right into the action. We got dude driving a dune buggy trying to outrun the Mr. Clean Mafia.
Believe it or not, we got a new show.
There's a lot. I did a lot of talking to the television while I was watching this.
He's the worst FBI agent there ever has been for someone to literally just take his pistol from him and throw it.
So let me pull a knife, and then he pulls it down. He's like, no, you're fine. Still.
I'm 37 and I want to fight a 16-year-old
child.
kid, and I tell him it's okay. I'm gonna use body armor.
Those Were the Days is filmed before a live internet audience.
Tonight, our fearless foursome find themselves in a fight for first place in the podcasting ring of fire. The third bout with the insatiable internet has them profoundly pondering the pure power of their podcast. They bring to the audience tonight a tale of wonder and whimsy. It's the Batman episode. Will the first episode of the Adam West and Burt Ward show keep them on their toes, or will they throw in the bat towel and display their disappointment? Stay tuned, you keen-eared listener. Our heroes are about to spin some yarn on this episode of Those Were the Days. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it is a show that brings to you the retro TV through nostalgic eyes, or whatever glorious tagline Travis wrote. Tonight we're here with the amazing Amy.
Hello.
The triumphant Travis of the TV.
Hello, chum.
And audacious Audie.
Howdy.
And myself, stupendous Steven. That's right. I used all that because, well, quite frankly, it's the Batman episode, and you can't just start a show without some sort of large amounts of alliteration and excitement towards what we're about to see. We watched Batman from 1966, the pilot High Diddle Riddle, and it's part 2, which I was unaware of until watching this, that it had a part 2. And I'm getting into it. I'm like, man, we're really getting... There's a lot of, oh man, oh, there's the end. Okay. This is a 20-minute show. I feel like I've been here for a while, and we still got a lot to cover. Quick synopsis for the episode. In this episode, the Riddler comes up with a nefarious scheme to sue Batman, which would, of course, force him to unmask in civil court. It could ruin him forever, not to mention that Aunt Harriet would find out what he was up to on all those fishing trips that he takes his ward, Dick Grayson, on, which we're going to talk about because that's just flipping interesting what they got going on. It's interesting. But to kick us off, I really want to hear just some hot takes about your feelings about the show, any memories you might have. And I want to kick it off with Amy, because you were the most you said I don't like superhero stuff, and then I told you Batman, and you said no,
It's fine.
this
No,
is
this
great.
is it.
We're
This
doing
is
this.
the one.
So where are you at on it?
So like I don't remember it as a kid, which doesn't mean I didn't watch it, but like I don't actually remember it. But my 30s very clearly defined by watching this show on AMC or whoever it was that was carrying it back when I had cable, and it was on like Sunday morning. So Sunday morning, and it was like all morning. So like Sunday morning, cup of coffee, pastry, just Batman all day. And so like I had definitely seen this episode before, but I didn't realize that this episode was the first episode. Fantastic. I I follow a Twitter account, which unfortunately seems to be inactive since the end of last year, but it is called Bat Labels, and all they do is tweet out pictures of various things that are labeled in Batman episodes. It's very good. So
Oh,
yeah, I love the hell out of this show.
I really want to get into the label stuff in a little bit because
Mhm.
that stood out to my wife immediately. So there's some early feedback. She was just like, "My word, this show is an organizer's dream." It's just everything about it was wonderful. But let's go to Travis. What are your thoughts on the Batman?
so this show takes me back to my childhood because I definitely remember this from my childhood. I watched it all the time. It would run for like 2-hour blocks every day. And if I was home from school, I was watching this. If it was summertime, I was watching this. It didn't matter. In fact, I have a very vivid memory of one of the rare times I had a legitimate fever dream was while watching an episode of Batman with the Mad Hatter, and his hat would flip up and it had these like creepy eyes that would come out. And I had a high fever that day and I freaked out. I thought that that dude was coming out of the TV and taking me away. Like, it was awful. To this day,
Uh,
anytime I see that version of the Mad Hatter, like, I immediately remember how I felt in that moment. And
oh.
Just
but I
fear.
I adore, yeah, just abject fear, but I adore this show. This version of Batman might be my favorite version of Batman because it just encompasses fun, and it is exactly what comic books were like at the time this came out.
Yeah.
They were silly, they were zany, they were fun. They had the words on, in the panels, so they put them on the screen when they would hit people, and I just loved that. And yes, it's campy. Yes, it's total cheeseball, and it's meant to be, and it's so much fun because of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
100%.
It definitely it's like a comic book come to life from that era.
Mhm.
And that's something people I think maybe when we were younger in the 90s didn't really respect this Batman that much because we were all in the Frank Miller Batman world. Which we can talk a little bit about the way those things differ, and like it's like Batman's so lame. I like my Dark Knight, give me that Batman. And maybe I want more Adam West. But we'll get into that too. Adi, what was your take?
Oh gosh, I loved it. I mean, like Travis, I grew up with it. I watched it all the time as a kid. So I don't remember where I watched it, but I just remember watching it all the time. Like we were talking pre-show, I remember episodes with Mr. Freeze and they had the beam of, where it was freezing and where it was regular temperature and only Mr. Freeze could survive in the freezing part and regular people would survive in you know, the warm parts and it was, just stupid lighting effects that they did that with. But it was so much fun. Like again, it's super campy, but one thing I love about it is that we're like you said in the 90s I think there were people rediscovering it and as we're getting the Tim Burton movies that's based on more of the dark Batman and people are like what is this? But I think we've gotten to a point now where more people respect it for what it was and celebrate it for what it was. Like
Mhm.
just that thing that recently came out where somebody put this Batman
Mhm.
in a
Yep.
cut of the movie and at the very end he dedicated it to Adam West specifically.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a love for this show that I think just kind of transcends where it came from.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
also there's a love from the people that made the show. Like, Adam West genuinely wanted to
Yep.
play Batman. He was a
Hmm.
fan of the comics growing up, and so there's this earnestness to his portrayal of it. Like, you can tell he knows how campy it is, but he's just going for it and he's loving it. And Burt Ward is having way too much fun as Robin, and all of the actors they would bring in as the special guest villain for that particular episode just hamming it up and chewing scenery left and like Caesar Romero in the first episode he's in as the Joker, just, I mean, goes to a 12 on a scale of 10. It's amazing. Frank Gorshin, which is in the episode we watched here, defined who the Riddler was. Like, he kind of made that character at all important because he wasn't
Yeah.
important in the comics prior to this series. So there,
I
there's
think
there's something to that.
I think the thing about having these big actors come in to be the villains, they don't have like they don't have anything to prove. Like, they don't have to worry about their careers. They can just go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Frank Gorshin, so good in this.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that they started with the Riddler because he's, I mean, he's A tier now, but I don't really know. Was he A tier then? I'm not really sure what his stance was, but it was
Not
definitely
at all.
coming out of the gate. But it's funny you mentioned that Adam West like going for the campiness and leaning in. Is something me and my wife were talking about recently because we watched some random video of these like Czech dudes with like crazy afros doing this ridiculous dance and song on some TV show. And I was like, this would fall apart if they didn't look like they cared that much. It looked like they were just into it. It's like you can be as dumb as you want if you lean in hard on
Mhm.
how ridiculous you are and you just treat yourself. It's like the dance in Napoleon Dynamite. Like he's
Yeah.
leaning in and you're
Yeah.
like, all right, he's cool now. Like whatever was going on with him before, I don't even care because that was the coolest performance I've ever seen. And I love that about this show. Like you're talking about with Adam West is fantastic. For me, I'm like a huge superhero fan. I was a Superman fan, like massive when I was a kid. Like I was 3 years old running around in pajamas with like the capes on the back and stuff. That
Mhm.
was me. Superman was my guy. Christopher Reeve Superman, George Reeves Superman, all the Supermans. But I loved Batman and Robin, the movie where they like dehydrate the UN or whatever that whole thing. Everybody remembers the bat shark repellent and the it's so hard to get rid of
Uh-huh.
a bomb these days and all that stuff. Like
Yep.
that's my exposure to Adam West Batman, and I never watched the TV show ever. Like my experience of these characters and these actors who play them is all based on the movie. Like you were talking about Julie Newmar, who I don't think was in the movie. I think that was somebody else. And Eartha Kitt.
Yeah.
Like
It
I'm like,
was.
wait, that was Hold on a minute, I'm remembering
Mhm.
something different. But it's because they were different actors. Right before we started the show, you mentioned Mr. Freeze. I was like, wait, they did Mr. Freeze? And the Mad Hatter. Now I'm like, what? Wait, hold on a second. I have missed a substantial amount of Batman lore. Like when I found out Batgirl was in the show, I was like, they had a Batgirl
Oh,
in the
yeah.
show? So
Oh yeah.
I am now like really into going back and finding out all this stuff. Like I want to go back and knowing that it's for free with commercials on Tubi TV. I'm like, yes, please. I'm gonna just turn these on at lunch and watch some flippin' Batman because it was
Hell
incredible.
yeah.
But one thing I did notice, I want to get down to the like scenes and stuff we loved about it, but was that they came out of the gate on all cylinders. Like everything that you were gonna see in the future, you were basically seeing glimpses of now. They're climbing
Yep.
buildings, the Batmobile's in there. They've got like just the the campy like we're gonna find out what's going on kind of dialogues all there. Working with the police is there. There's no origin story here. Like
No.
No.
He briefly mentions like, if there had been crime prevention centers when I was young, maybe my parents wouldn't have died. That's
yeah.
all we need. Like, great,
Yeah.
fantastic. We do not need to see Mrs. Wayne's fake pearls in an alleyway again. We
Nope.
just don't.
And they
No.
knew this then, where we'd had
Mhm.
like maybe 2 on-screen versions of Batman at that point, and it was all the comic books. They just trusted the audience, like people know who Batman is. Like, what are we
He's a
doing?
man
Mhm.
and a bat. And it's fine.
Yeah,
Don't
Yeah.
worry
he's
about it.
just a bat in a suit with eyebrows because that's important.
Mhm.
Like it was
Oh,
just
by the way, the suit in this episode is more purple
mhm.
than it goes in. It becomes a little bit less purple in later episodes. But I noticed that distinctly in this. I'm like, that cowl is very purple, but the ears are a different color.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So getting into like favorite scenes, and we're encompassing if you're listening, you're joining in, you didn't watch the second episode. We're gonna go ahead and encompass both part 1 and part 2 of our of our show. So were there any scenes to you guys that stood out that you were like, that is some good television? Audie, we'll start with you.
The first thing that I wrote down was we were talking about labeling stuff. When they first opened the bookshelf and it says access to Batcave via bat poles
Yep.
on the wall.
And it has their names
As
because
if
they can't
we had no
remember.
idea what was going on.
They can't remember left and right. This show is the epitome of tell don't show.
Yes.
We're
Right.
just gonna tell you what everything does.
But
Yep.
I love that they did the trope of we go down the poles in our regular normal clothing, and when they come down the poles, they're in full costume somehow.
How does that work?
I was just like, nice.
You don't
Well, I
question
mean-
it. It just does.
I mean, the pants just have to be sitting there, so it's the shirt part that's going to be the tough part.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's
But really, I think my favorite thing that encapsulates this Batman is when they're up on the roof going to catch the Riddler. They cut the bars off the window, and Robin's about to chuck it. And Batman's like, pedestrian safety, Robin. And Robin's like, oh, yeah. And then Batman pulls out a hook specifically for putting on the wall to hold these bars
Mhm.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh,
It's
brilliant.
so good.
because he's got it.
I was
It's so
laughing so
brilliant.
hard at that I almost cried. It's just like that is just the best. And it came out of a utility belt container. It said bat hook or something. I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
remember. But it
Right.
was labeled. It was like, but
Oh.
let's pause for a second and think about how many buttons exist in Batman's Batcave, in the car. Like, you can't remember all that stuff.
The
Like,
best is the one in the Batmobile that is the theft deterrent button that he
Uh-huh.
changes the label so that it says start button.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
that's. Mm.
I mean,
Oh,
have you guys
brilliant.
ever rented?
Chef's kiss.
Have you ever rented an Airbnb and gone in and all the light switches tell you what they do?
Oh yeah.
Oh my god! Like, how
Mhm.
much do you appreciate that, right?
Dude, I've done that in houses I've lived in.
Right? Yeah. I mean, consider for a moment that Batman might just be the most conscientious host that you'll ever meet. It's like, hey, could you go in the house? I need you to find my keys. They're in a drawer labeled drawer that holds keys. I need you to open that. And in there, you'll find a small box. It says house keys. You open that, then you can get my
Yep.
keys. Like, you wouldn't have to, you'd never have to look for anything. You know exactly where it is
Nope.
at all times. Walk up to the nuclear reactor and press
Reactor.
the off button.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But and honestly, I don't think it's Batman that does it. I actually think it's Alfred that labels everything.
You
Because
think-
This is a real
because what
efficient
happened was
Alfred.
early on in Batman's career, he pushed the wrong button, he grabbed the wrong thing, and Alfred's like, "All right, we're not dealing with this
We're
anymore."
not doing
And
this
so he
again.
wandered around and labeled everything.
they're good labels too. It's not like those old, crunchy labels where you would
The
squeeze the
crunchy
thing.
labels, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
These are legit. Like, this costs money. This is billionaire
Oh, yeah.
level label
Oh, yeah.
making. They didn't just
Millionaire.
have Brother
He's
P
a
touches.
he's a
He's a
millionaire.
millionaire.
Oh, millionaire.
Not a
Excuse me.
billionaire back then.
No, nobody had that much
Perish the
money.
thought.
He got sued for $1 million by the Riddler, who wanted to make sure he had to unmask in court, and he would have to do it because that's the law. I love Lawful Good Batman. I love that that's the place we went.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I want Batman on the fringes anymore. I want Batman talking to the police, working the court
He is
system.
Properly deputized.
Yes. Yeah,
He is not a
Duly
vigilante.
Duly deputized.
So Travis, what scene, if any, stands out to you most as the kicker?
The probably my favorite scene would be anything that had the Riddler in it, because Frank Gorshin is just going for it. And I love how the first time you see him, he's in the green suit with all the question marks all over it, and he's got the black bowler hat. Like, that is a amazing look. But then he ditches that right away for the like kind of singlet that he would wear. However, if you notice, he always has his mask around his neck.
Yeah.
And that was because Frank Gorshin hated wearing the domino mask. So if he had an opportunity to pull that off his face, he would. So whenever he shows up in the series, as you watch it, pay attention to that, Steven, because you'll notice he's almost always got that mask just hanging around his neck. But anything that he was in stood out to me. The other one was the very kind of dark turn that the second episode took that just gets completely glossed over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which is when the female henchwoman who is disguised as Robin gets into the Batcave, and as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, "Wow, first couple of episodes, and already we have somebody in the Batcave. How is he going to get out of like nobody knowing where this is? Oh, because she's going to fall into the nuclear reactor and die."
But
And
Open
we're just not-
nuclear
we're just-
reactor.
yeah, and we're just not going to say anything about it after that, other than
We're gonna be
like
sad
lamenting
at the
at her
end.
death.
yeah.
Yeah. But like, that's it. No grand thing. No, like there's no noose railings or anything. I mean, that's an ocean nightmare anyway.
Yeah. Random
Like you have an
nuclear
open nuclear
reactor.
reactor going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Open.
that
Yeah.
that
This
stood out to me.
this is clearly before anyone knew how nuclear worked. 'Cause nobody cared.
Mhm.
Like it's just like, I don't know, how's he charge the Batmobile? Because it has that turbine. Not something simple like he has a gas pump in the cave. No, we're gonna go
Nope.
ahead and power it with
Nope.
nuclear power. Well done. Like a submarine. People know what
Yeah.
submarines are. It's fantastic. Amy, how about you?
So I there's kind of two. I did not realize that the very first episode, was the Bat 2C episode where he
Mm.
gets the drugged orange juice at the bar and is
Yep.
doing the Bat
Mhm.
2C, which I was like, that's got to be like 3 seasons in. No, no, it's right now. Okay, fantastic. Because that was on my short list of like drug episodes of shows, right? I was like, "Oh, no," and because he doesn't drink, and then they poison him. The other one has to be the bat U-turn,
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
lever with
Mhm.
the parachutes. Now, this has a special place in my heart because my father's a big drag racing fan, and so as a result, as children and also still now, he will say, like, if he's applying the brakes when driving, sometimes he will say, "Pull the chute." And so that just, it's a very special place. And like, definitely Batman could have pulled just like a regular U-turn, but no, we needed to deploy. And then, so you had to deploy the parachutes and then do the turn. And then we have to hit the parachute release button because we
Yeah.
don't want anybody being like, well, now you've got a parachute. Look at all the direct. No, it's gone. We covered that.
Mhm.
No loopholes here, people.
They really focus on the
Nonsense.
details, on this
Yes.
show.
Mhm.
If they're gonna label everything,
Absolutely.
you're gonna know when to cut a parachute loose.
Mhm.
And this was a time before internet feedback, they had to they didn't need to
Someone
worry
was going to
about
write an angry letter to the network.
yeah, it'd
Yeah,
be
exactly.
actual handwritten letters or typewritten like, by the
Mhm.
way, actually there's this parachute issue that you created in episode 1. Could you explain that? Yeah, no, that's perfect. Um, for me, like I wanted to pick a scene that was comic or a scene that really encapsulates Batman, but I have continued to be haunted by one scene in particular. And it's when they're about to do Robin's wonderful mask, or they've gotten the plaster off his face, which they courteously put no straws in his nose so he can breathe. They don't want to kill him.
Mhm.
So he's with Molly, the henchwoman, and the Riddler at one point, he is cackling about having Robin, and then he gets so serious and stern. And he like it's like he's gonna like make out with Molly. Like they're getting their faces
Mhm.
real close, and he's just like, go get your stuff on. And it's like this it was a transformation to me. I'm like, give Frank Gorshin an Emmy. Because what he just did,
Oh
he
yeah.
he just flipped a switch and became a real sinister villain in the drop of a hat, and it blew my mind because I was reminded of like Superman 2. It's been going around lately is basically Christopher Reeve going from Clark Kent to Superman's the best special effect that's been in movies ever, because he just hunched over, kind of
Mhm.
mild mannered, and then he's like upright, and you're like, that's a different human being. And that's
Mhm.
that's what I felt like Frank Gorshin did. I'm like, he's a goofy character. I'm hilarious. And all of a sudden I'm like, dang, this guy's he is screwed up. He's a criminal mastermind.
Well, and again, that's where I'm saying earlier, where like the earnestness of what they were doing shows through. Like that, it's campy and it's silly, but then there's a moment like that happens and it elevates it. It makes it better because you are going to remember that now. Just that flip that Frank Gorshin did,
Yeah.
and I absolutely love that. So
Yeah, and I mean, as coming from the movie, it's almost like he's always trying to differentiate himself from the Joker a little bit, because they're
Mhm.
both.
Mhm.
I feel like it needs a little bit of a separation, like what the Riddler is and what the Joker is. And I don't know that they had that pegged at this point, because they were both very like
Oh, sure, they didn't.
giggly,
Yeah.
cackly, whatever. And the Riddler, this was a moment where you could almost see like, okay, he's a little bit different. He's got a different vibe
Mhm.
going on, and I just appreciated that so much, that we had a moment of true villainy in this
Yeah.
whole thing. But yeah, but going back a little bit to the beginning of the show, and this this thing we get ourselves involved in, or Batman gets involved in when he tackles the Riddler during a crime that's not a real crime, which I couldn't help but take note of the fact that the Riddler, who I'm guessing is in incognito mode now, even though he's wearing a green suit with like
Yeah.
all the question marks, is maybe that guy's the Riddler. And then the next time you see him, he's actually in his hideout with his mask on. And I was like, wait a minute, you're in your hideout with the mask on, but you're out in the world just, I'm the Riddler, but don't worry, I'm just a guy in a riddle suit.
Yeah,
But just
kind of. Yeah.
yeah, to talk about the premise a little bit and where we're going. How is this the right way to introduce a Batman? With the lawsuit, the mask coming off, like, could we have done anything smarter? I don't know. I'm just looking for commentary on the overall plot of
I mean,
episode 1.
I remember a lot of plots of this where it was trying to unmask Batman. Like
Yeah.
that was the big thing for all these criminals, was to get Batman to take his mask off. I think Joker was going to do that early on, and because nobody knew who he was, so that was the big thing, was to expose who Batman really is. So yeah, I think it works.
Yeah.
And I
You
think
know,
they use it for Batman and Bruce to be very dramatic about it. Like when they're back at the mansion, Bruce is talking about how much being unmasked, not being Batman anymore, it will just destroy him personally. He won't be able to
Yeah.
do what he wants to do, which is, be Batman and solve crimes that way instead of any other way he could with $1 million. You know?
Exactly.
But it's just, it's one of those things too, where again, we talked about it. We're dropped right into the middle of this episode. There's no origin story. It's just, this is Batman. Because at that point, you either knew Batman or you didn't.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
you knew who Batman was or you didn't know who Batman was. And if you didn't know who Batman was, well, just come along for the ride because it's a
Yeah,
fun
you'll
one.
pick it up.
Yeah, won't take
Mhm.
you long. He's a hero at the time.
Also, Adam West was one of the few actors, I think, until Ben Affleck, that's actually the height of Bruce Wayne in the comics,
Oh, really?
because Adam West was 6'2",
Yeah.
and most, like, Michael Keaton's not that tall, Christian Bale's not that tall, Val Kilmer isn't. Affleck's 6'4", I think, so he was like the next one to be. But that's even more important when you look at Alfred standing next to him and you realize that
Yeah.
Alan Napier was 6'6". Like,
Yeah.
he towers over Adam West.
Mhm.
Alfred was just this like beanpole wandering around there, and I don't know why I forgot that completely. So when I was watching, I was like, "Holy crap, that guy is tall!"
I wonder
He's
if
he's a great Alfred.
Oh
he's
my
so
Like-
good.
gosh, yes.
So good. I like his very subtle, like, so in the beginning we see Bruce Wayne is having a meeting with the people who are running the foundation. And so Commissioner Gordon and Officer O'Hara, I forget his title.
Chief
Chief
O'Hara.
O'Hara.
Chief O'Hara. And so the
It
best part
was-
is, like, so they know it's the Riddler because there's a riddle. Fantastic.
Mhm.
No problem. That's the best thing about the 66 Batman Rogues Gallery. We never wonder about who's committing the crime. We're always very aware of who is committing the crime, and that's fine. And so they ask, hey, who's up for this task? And like they all just look at their feet. Like, no, you should just call Batman. So they call Batman. Alfred comes into this meeting that Bruce Wayne is having and says, Sir, it's the Bat phone. And instead of Bruce saying, excuse me, I forgot I have to take a call. I'm sorry, I need to cut things short. Something's come up. He says, I forgot I promised to take my young ward fishing.
Yeah.
Which,
Well,
What?
even the fact that Alfred answers the phone and it's just like, hang on, sir, I'll get
I'll
him.
get him.
It's like, okay, so Batman automatically has a butler.
Yeah.
And we're
I
just
mean,
cool with that.
who doesn't?
Well, and it's
God,
funny
it's
because
really-
I watched a few episodes more of the show, and Alfred is the only one that ever answers the
Yeah.
Bat phone, ever.
Bruce is busy.
He is, and it's just always, he just picks it up and immediately just says, "I'll go get him, sir," and sets the phone down and walks away.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, because there was an episode later on where Commissioner Gordon is in Wayne Manor. You have to wonder that he's got to be like, you sound an awful lot like the guy that answers for Batman.
Are you telling me there's no bat voice alterator in the phone?
Oh,
Because
there you go.
I mean, there'd probably be labeled if there was, but
Right. It would be labeled. There'd be a switch on the phone and it would say like Bat voice changer.
voice,
yeah.
yep, voice changing.
You're
That's
right.
if he changed his voice at all, anyways. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
which
right. Yeah,
Adam West didn't do.
No.
no, and he shouldn't. The costume does enough. No one will ever guess.
Exactly.
I mean,
no one would
Billy,
ever realize
millionaire,
that's him.
philanthropist, playboy fellow masquerading around as a Batman. No, that's completely
No,
preposterous.
not at all.
That would never happen. I was.
By the way, I had forgotten that Chief O'Hara was a character in this too, and
Oh, yeah.
So
and
did
I don't
I.
remember if Chief O'Hara came from the comics, although I assume that he did. But I know that given it was the 1960s and there was a police officer in the show, they're contractually obligated for him to be Irish.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
It
Mhm.
was written into the law of
Officer
making
Patio
television.
Furniture at your
Yep.
service.
Patio furniture. That's good. I like that. I was really waiting for them when he said there was one point later in the show where they were connecting phone lines or just put somebody on the phone. I can't remember if it was a mobile phone, bat phone situation. But I was waiting for them to just put two telephones together, like opposite each
Together.
other.
So was
Yes.
I was like, they're gonna
Like,
do the thing that you used to do when you wanted two phones to talk to each other. You flip them over. Have your
no, they had a
conversation.
girl do it.
I know. I was like, dang nabbit, this was such a good opportunity to show classic 60s technology. Boom. There were quite a few gadgets that did show up in this show. Not, I mean, you've got the Batmobile, which is a gadget in and of itself with its turbines. You have the mobile bat computer that was basically a punch card computer machine that
That was
just
talking to the bat computer in the bat cave
Yeah.
via radio satellite.
The automatic radio link.
the automatic radio
Automatic
link.
radio
Is that a
link.
thing? Like, could someone in the chat find out if that's a thing that existed in the
Beep, beep,
60s
beep,
that
beep,
would
beep,
even
beep,
make
beep.
sense? I mean, we've got a nuclear reactor in there. Surely he could figure out how to
Right.
push
They had
these
atomic
signals.
batteries in the Batmobile, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Because atomic batteries to power, turbines to speed.
Turbines to speed. Yeah.
It was
Tell
just
me you're
bat
not gonna-
Wi-Fi. They didn't have that term yet.
Yeah.
Who knew the Batmobile was like an EV? Had the batteries in it and everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
with a turbine.
I like how clearly the subways system in Gotham City runs 100% of the time on time because all they had to do was like, give me a schedule and I'll tell you where they are.
Mhm.
Yes.
I will say, anytime someone from overseas comes over here for a work thing, they're always like, "Your public transit, it just needs so much help." I'm
It's a
like, "Yeah."
disaster.
They're like, "Can you get
Yeah.
places around here?" No, but I go over there. I'm like riding a train like 4 hours away, and they are top notch. They mean
Zippy.
business.
Mhm.
They're on schedule, and they bring a cart with snacks. Just wonderful experience. Everyone should do that. But I digress. So the thing about the mobile bat computer that cracked me up the most, that just gave me so much joy, was that they're standing at this trunk talking about it, and it's doing this like sideways, lateral, card reading, whatever it's doing. Then they zoom in on it. It stopped. They put the card in. They go back to the previous scene. It's running a mile, just
Yeah.
like crazy. Clearly,
Mhm.
there's a continuity problem here because the way it cuts is just like, I'm in, I'm watching, I'm stopped, I'm out, I'm going, I'm in, I'm there. It was
Yep.
just, I love the aspect of this show that's very much it's obviously a budgeted show. It's got money,
Mhm.
but the way that they made things work and just went with things that happened, like, I mean, they made capes that stuck out 90 degrees off the back of these guys when they're climbing and turn the camera sideways.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. What Travis's shirt has on it. And I'm sitting there thinking the only way they could make those capes fall is if they had wires in them that were actually like jutted out. That's a guerrilla TV making, y'all. Like, that's what you do when you're a kid. And you're like, I'm gonna shoot a movie, and you make up junk like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And
And it was funny when people would pop out the window and you're like, okay, so technically they're looking out the window. Look at them.
yeah.
And those got better too as the series went on because they'd start getting like
Mhm.
celebrity cameos.
Mhm.
You'd have like celebrities popping out of the window being like, "Hey, Batman," and it was always Citizen.
Citizen.
It's just real
The way
impressive.
Batman, the way Batman talks in this series is so good.
Oh yeah.
Just calling everybody old chum.
Old
I
chum.
love Batman and Robin.
Mhm.
I love how Batman and Robin, after they do something good, will just have like a hearty handshake
Mhm.
and then
Or
go on with their day. Like,
or when they're right before they get to where Batman tackles Robin, they've received another riddle
Mhm.
that is the clue to what's actually going on. A lot of these riddle answers are a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
they're about to climb the building, right? And Robin's like, "Oh, gee, I just can't figure out this riddle." And Batman's like, "Well, if you weren't still thinking about that girl that winked at you while
Yes.
we were coming across
Yes.
town."
Yep. That was
Or
that
my
father
favorite was
son
later
moment.
on when they drove to the club and Batman's about to get out of the car and Robin's like, I'm gonna go in too. And they're like, no, this is not a club for those underage. And Robin's like, why not? And Batman's like, it's the
It's the
law.
law.
Yep.
And
And he
then
makes him wait in the car.
Robin
Yeah.
immediately drives the car to the parking spot. So we know he's older than
Mhm.
16, but probably
Yep.
younger than 18.
Right.
It's hard to gauge because Burt Ward is definitely 20 something. Again,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
with the whole like, he's my young Ward. I'm like, dude, that guy, he's not that
He's
young.
fine.
He's, I know you, he's not
He has
12.
an IRA. He's fine.
It's- so yeah, so this is just we're off to a roaring start right there at the beginning at the club. It was a go-go club because that was a thing.
Yep.
I know what I was gonna ask. The riddles. We brought up the riddles a few different times. Were y'all able to figure out any of them before Batman did? Like, did you know any of the answers?
No.
Because I was.
Because
I did not.
they're not good
I don't think I was
riddles.
trying to, because
No.
you're
before,
just
as soon as they read
experiencing
them
it.
out,
Yeah,
it was just like,
You're just
oh,
like,
that's how you do it.
that's a good point.
that's it.
Yeah,
And the number of times Robin
Because
answered
he's the
it as
world's
opposed to
greatest
Batman.
detective.
there you
Yeah.
go. There you go. Which
Yep.
is something, if you haven't seen the Batman yet, it definitely throws back to him actually being a detective and knowing things and figuring things out, which is important. He
Mhm.
doesn't just punch people and throw batarangs. There's more to it than that, and that's what makes him such a cool character. But there's one riddle in particular that even after hearing the answer to it, I really have no idea what they're talking about. And that one was, what do an orange and a bell have in common? And it was that they were both peeled or something.
Yeah.
And I can't figure out how
Yeah.
you peel a bell.
Mm.
Does anybody
Because
know?
that's what a bell, yeah, it can toll or it can peel. It's the
Oh,
same. It's like but it was the jumping to the Peel Art Gallery that I went,
Mhm.
all right, let's reel it back a little bit there, Batman.
Yeah.
Like, that is a
I
jump.
mean, it's one of those words that stumps you on Wordle. So
Yeah.
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
definitely a crossword
you're
word.
like,
Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'd never heard of a bell being peeled before.
Yeah.
So that was new to me. Thank you for today. I learned here on First of the Days. Maybe you learned something as well, friends. But yeah, so we haven't even gotten yet to Batman drunk on orange juice. We figured that out.
Yep.
That was
Yep.
a lot of fun because he's just, hey ladies, that was a very James Bond letting his guard down kind of moment, really. With the
I just
clearly
love the
sinister
fact that he
people.
ordered orange juice of all things.
Right, yeah, like milk. I've
Yeah.
heard milk thrown out there before when you're
Yep.
a straight-laced human at a bar. You
Yeah.
just got any milk, water, orange juice. I guess it's a
I
good
like
thing.
that this whole plot, right? Like, the only thing that Riddler wants is to just ruin Batman. And like, this is part of it, right? It's like Batman seen drunk at club, and then he gets in the car and
Oh
he is
yeah.
not okay. You have to come take his keys.
Yep.
Yeah, save
Mhm.
Robin.
That was amazing.
Drunk Batman was pretty good. He's doing a really good job ruining him up to this point, like you said.
Yeah.
He's basically tearing apart his reputation. One thing I did love, I'd forgotten about this when he did tackle the Riddler for the first time. After the whole bat hook thing, they tackle him, and the photographers come in. The photograph that shows up on the news that night is from the angle we saw it from, not from
Yep.
the
Yep.
angle the photographers
Mhm.
took the picture from. And this happened multiple times throughout the
Mhm.
show where it's like, we're not really going to care where the cameras are. We're just going to go ahead
Well, I
and
mean,
use
when he
what
goes
we
into the
have.
Go-Go Club, and Robin's like, I'll just watch it.
Yeah.
What camera is he
What-
watching?
yeah, where-
Watching.
tapping into the security cameras. Very high
The
quality.
Go-Go Club had an amazing name, and now I can't remember what it was.
Oh,
Oh
it did
no, I'm
have a
gonna have to look
play
it
on
up.
Go-Go, which was
Yes, it did.
we played on Go-Go a couple times. When Molly falls into the nuclear reactor, what a way to go. What Batman? Come
Oh
on. Come on. You're just lamenting the fact she fell into your nuclear reactor and you throw a joke?
It's not
yeah,
good.
That's bad.
that's bad, Batman.
That's
Bad work.
that's a bad move. So yeah, so they're on their trail trying to take out Batman by various means. They kidnap Robin, the boy wonder himself, down in the basement of this club, or I guess the subway station at this point.
Mhm.
They've got him laid up, and now we're finally learning like what they're up to. Oh, they're gonna make a mask out of Robin's face. And I'm sitting there going, no, that's not going to be quality enough. But I am mistaken. I am
Because
These people,
oh boy,
Yeah, you hold on to that for a second. Yeah, and
well, I mean, they obviously have money, as we learned from the first time that we see the hench people down in the place, and there is the like foot tall jar of caviar
yes,
and the
That she's
cases
just
of champagne,
yeah, we
yep.
know it's caviar because it's
she
labeled.
can't. Yeah, but she can't eat it
Mhm.
because she might get fat.
She might get
And then
fat.
what good is she gonna be?
What a
Ugh.
horrible boy. We've grown a lot these years, but I mean they're villains, right? So they could be
Yeah,
jerks.
exactly.
They're allowed to be
Mhm.
jerks. Villains should have a pass to be jerks in a show and us not hold it
Yeah.
against them. You know, that's how
Nope.
they operate. So
Mhm.
yeah,
True.
is it wrong? Yes. Is it in character? Probably.
Yep.
But
Mhm.
yeah, we have a giant foot tall caviar jar. I didn't even know they came in like massive jars. And who's eating like by the spoonful, like peanut butter? It's just not.
Mhm.
It's not okay. I figured they probably stole that from somebody, but you know
I assume.
they could have
Seems like a good
they
heist.
could have bought it. You know what I do love is that this mask. Getting back to that, I'm convinced like oh it's gonna be a rubber mask, but no, they have some incredible quality in that it looks just like Burt Ward when she puts the mask
Mhm.
on in what is one
Mhm.
of the greatest cuts I've ever seen
So
from
good.
mask. It's just like I'm gonna
Yeah.
partially put on this definitely not a real mask, and then cut the scene, and then boom, that's Burt Ward standing there, but in a very different posture. Burt Ward
Mhm.
Yes.
is working it.
Yep.
Mhm.
He's selling that.
He is runway ready, baby. He's got the
Mhm.
walk down. I fell on the floor. That was when I just
I
left.
like they could replicate his outfit. They could replicate his face, but his utility belt, that is we gotta take that. That we cannot.
Yeah.
So that was the other major trope of this series, right? Was everyone was trying to unmask Batman, and his utility belt was just like that was the everyone's kryptonite. And I remember there were like there's an episode where Joker makes his own utility belt, but it's not quite as good. Like it's a fake version of the utility belt, and he has to swap his with Batman's at some point. So like those utility belts were, I'll tell you what, that's some craftsmanship that you just can't replicate no matter how good.
No,
Where
that's
does
where
he get those wonderful toys?
that's where those millions of dollars went. They mostly went into
Mhm.
R&D
Yep,
for that utility belt. I mean, it fits everything he needs
absolutely.
when he needs it.
Mhm.
It's perfect. It
Mhm.
did have the homing device on it. That's probably the reason they needed Robin's
Yeah,
utility belt
that's true.
because it
That's
had the
true.
Mhm.
bat, not just the homing device, but I think the bat
The
homing
bat
device.
homing
Yeah, it's
device.
all everything bat everything, just in case
Mhm.
he were to get the regular homing device confused with this bat homing device. I don't know how he
Exactly.
would because they're probably labeled wherever they
Labeled.
are. They have
Yep.
a
Yeah.
label on them. I want to live my
I mean,
life like they
Alfred.
do. Like, I mean, just
I'm
monitor
so
one,
far from
monitor
that. It's
two, speaker A, speaker B. By the way,
the
the spray they knocked him out with
mhm.
also labeled A and B.
A
Yeah,
Yes.
one to knock
Yep.
him out, one to wake him up.
I think the best I can hope for is like the villain headquarters full of cardboard boxes. Because
Yes.
every villain headquarters in this show is full of cardboard boxes, and it's
Because there's gotta be something that you knock the henchmen
Mhm.
into
Yeah,
that they can
Mhm.
fall over.
it's action packed. That's how you make
Mhm.
action. You throw them into something. It's got to be something
Yep.
that will break the stunt man. We did have a question come in the chat that I think is interesting. Do we think the various villains' henchmen were unionized, and how does one find a henching gig? That's a
so
good
there
question.
is an amazing book unrelated to Bat well, like tangentially. Like I had this ready because the henchmen in this show are so good, and like, there's no way this book isn't at least a slight nod. There's a book called Hench
Yeah.
by Natalie Zena Walshots, and it is so good, and it is exactly like it's where do henchmen come from, and it is that
Mhm,
book, and it
mhm.
is so good.
I agree. I have that
And
book. I bought it because the Barnes and Noble bookshelf said buy this, and I said okay.
It's very
It's
good.
very good.
and and the henchmen in this series are the epitome of henchmen because they are all themed to whatever villain they're working with at
labeled.
the time
Yeah.
and labeled. They will wear shirts with their names on it. And their names will always be like if it's the Penguin, every henchman has a bird name.
Mhm.
If it's Mr. Freeze, every henchman has some cold name like Chill or Nippy or something like that. Like they're just ridiculous. Catwoman's henchmen all had cat
Cat names,
puns or cat
yeah.
names. Like it's just I love that, and I love the fact that they've very clearly labeled themselves as henchmen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Because again,
it's
it's
just
the villains are not like Batman is the only one who is trying to hide. The villains do not care.
They're
They're
just
nope,
out
not at
there.
all.
They're basically just trying to drag him to their level. Like, just be out
Yeah.
there.
Pretty
What
much.
is wrong
Yeah.
with you? Quit hiding in the shadows, or not really even in the shadows. He just kind of wanders around in broad daylight all the
Midday.
time. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like this is fine. I did find myself a little disconnected from it a few times and just imagined like, what if a man just dressed like that and went places? Like maybe like 20 years ago it looked weird, but now today we'd just be like, hey, what are you going to a thing? Like, what's your deal?
Yeah, you
Mhm.
gotta
You
think.
at a party or something?
Well, I mean, that was the whole thing about Greatest American Hero last week. Like,
Mhm.
he thought he was going to be put in a loony bin walking around in
Mhm.
that suit.
Yeah.
Batman and Robin are just like, hey, everybody.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, hey.
Hey, Batman, what's going on?
Yeah,
Why?
Batman's like the most popular guy in town. Everybody loves Batman.
Yeah.
Hey, Batman.
I
There's an
mean,
episode later on where Batman and Robin are there for the christening of a new cruise ship.
Why
And even the
not?
commissioner's like, I don't know why Bruce Wayne can't make it for this, but if we don't do it now, we're going to be late. And Batman, and you just see Batman standing there, and he's just kind of got the look like, yeah, sure, let's just do this thing so I can leave.
I don't mean to take us too far off the beaten path here, but you bring up this aspect of Batman and Robin just being out in the public and having all this stuff. And I cannot help but imagine the Joel Schumacher Batman movies of the 90s of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. And
Mhm.
what mistake did they make? Because if you take Batman 66 and you just take apart the pieces of it, you can put a lot of those pieces in Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. You find a lot of that DNA sprinkled in those
Oh,
two movies,
Yeah.
just everywhere.
that is exactly what they were going for, and it came off of the heels of Batman Returns.
Is that
So
why
Batman
we
Returns,
hate it?
yeah. Well, so Batman Returns was even darker, and with the way that like the Penguin was portrayed and all of that, and it upset parents, it upset like the watch
Oh,
groups,
my mom hated it.
and sponsors, right? McDonald's famously was upset with it, and all sorts of stuff like this. So Fox was like, all right, we can't go in that direction anymore. And so when they brought in Schumacher, they wanted it more kid friendly, and so he leaned into basically trying to do that style, and he wanted it to be campier. And the problem was we didn't want that as audiences in the 90s.
Yeah.
We just didn't. Everything like you mentioned, The Dark Knight and kind of Frank Miller and then Batman 89, and that's what the audiences wanted, quote unquote. Now, I've gone back and watched Batman Forever in the last couple of years. It's not great, but it has some redeeming qualities to it. Batman and Robin just like it went too far, and I don't think I know there's people that like it, but I didn't want that out of that particular because it's trying to be tied into the same world, right?
Sure.
So you have the
Mhm.
same
Yeah.
you have the same Alfred, but now this Alfred has gone from Jack Nicholson's Joker to Arnold Schwarzenegger making cold puns with every word
Yes,
that comes out of
me
his mouth.
too.
The Ice Age.
Mhm.
And
Well, I think
that was part of it is that it was so incongruous to what we had in that world, so to speak, before
Yeah.
Right.
that just didn't work.
and I think part of the problem is they wanted it both ways.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
wanted to keep Batman dark, but then they wanted this more kid-friendly version. But he's still got to be dark. But he's got to be kid-friendly. And I think it's just stretched it too much. of trying to do everything all at once rather than just saying, let's just go full camp and make it for the kids like we should. And it's like we gotta keep it like it was before. So I Joel Schumacher tried, and everybody blames him so much. He's like, I'm trying to make it look like a comic book. And part of the problem is we have moved past those comic books
Yeah.
at that time. Like the comic books coming out of Batman at that point were not the super colorful, cheesy ones that inspired Batman 66.
No, and
But
even
that's all
even
he really knew and was using.
Mm.
yeah, but even like the animated series was in the 90s, and it kind of towed the line of being dark and kid friendly, but it didn't try, like it didn't go too far in either direction, and I feel like it worked better. But they were able to toe that line and do that. And for some reason, just the Schumacher movies couldn't pull it off. Now, I think a big part of it is just that it was a live action version of something that didn't exist at the time, and nobody really was feeling like watching. There was a missing earnestness from it.
Yep.
Whether it's Val
Mhm.
Kilmer or George Clooney, who are both fine actors, but they never felt like they really cared about playing Batman or Bruce Wayne. Like
Right.
George Clooney's kind of sleepwalking through that role. Val Kilmer never fully embraces it. And so like that's missing. That's the part that's missing. While you've got Arnold going full bore for it and Uma Thurman just
Yep.
like
Oh,
chewing
yeah.
the scenery up, you're missing something there. Like the
Mhm.
villains were going for it, but without the earnestness of your Batman, your Robin, and poor Michael Goff and his Alfred, who by that third movie is just like, oh, just put him out of his misery. And that's what's missing from it. So and then everything around it, I just felt like didn't quite capture what they wanted. So
Trying to wear two hats, and they were unable to
Mhm.
Yeah.
accomplish.
For
You couldn't.
sure.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about leaning in. Like if you're gonna do it, do it. You know,
You
don't
have to.
yeah,
You have to
don't
Mhm.
do
try
all of
to
it.
don't try to satisfy two different audiences. Just go for the one you want and go hard, and you'll get them and then some. Because you're just,
Mhm.
and I think that's what a lot of modern comic book movies has taught us is just treat the source material with respect and go for what you want. And everybody's like, well, holy cow, that's like a straight up panel from a comic I've read. I'm into that. And then you end up, it has a
and
halo effect of look at all these passionate people. What are they in? It's all the people standing in line at an Apple store for a new iPhone, and people just go, what are they waiting on? I'll stand here too. Like that social
yep.
experiment.
Yep.
It
Mhm.
Yep.
happens.
Well, and we saw like with the Batman animated series that would come out, there was the Batman the animated series in the 90s. There's been several since then. What we found was that some of them tried to go dark and gritty in the animated series, and some of it worked, but like then somebody's like, let's make Batman the Brave and the Bold, and it's basically an animated version of Batman 66, and it's
Mhm.
brilliant. If you haven't
Yeah.
watched that, watch it. It is so much fun. Diedrich Bader's
Yeah.
Batman
Mhm.
is great. It's got the single best version of Aquaman ever put to screen is in Batman the Brave and the Bold. And it's so good. But that was, again, they leaned into that and they went for that style. And that's again what makes Batman 66 so great, is that they had no pretense to it. Comic books were colorful, silly, and fun at the time. I mean, this is an era of Batman comics where he's taking on I think there was like the Rainbow Warrior came over at some point. I know Calendar Man, and maybe it was
Yeah.
Polka Dot Man. The Condiment King was somebody that he fought. Kite Man.
So good.
Yeah.
There was a comic, and I don't remember what the storyline was, but Batman had to wear various different colored suits. So he
Oh
had like a
yeah.
lime green and pink and yellow bat suits, and he had to wear all of those. Something to do with color in the villain. I don't remember it. If it was, I want to say it was like Rainbow Man or something, but this was the era of like the silly villains that they had, and even the Joker at the time was really silly,
Yeah.
and the Riddler was not as popular, but he was very silly, and so the show just embraced that, and it made it's fun. And we did get one bit of feedback on Twitter, and I have to read this because it's great. It's from Phil Rude, and he says the show is evergreen. I loved it as a legit superhero show when I was a kid. I loved it for the campiness as I got older. I love it for Julie Newmar always and forever.
Mm.
So he's
Mhm.
kind of nailed it right there. Like
Mhm.
that it was if you're a kid, it's a fun, adventurous show. When you get older, you start to appreciate that campiness. And Julie Newmar or Eartha Kitt, either one you want to go with, Catwoman, it's fantastic. But like all of that, it's what made this show so great is all of those people involved in this the zaniness of everything. Having Zot and Bang and whatever other random
Pow.
Pow, yeah.
yeah that they would put on screen, and I just love it. I love all of it.
It really did, and like even though throughout this episode I kept losing the plot line, I'm not good at keeping up. Like if I watch a James Bond movie, I'm mostly just watching really great action scenes and people thinking, and then I'm
Sure.
like, I have no idea why we're at this place or why we're fighting, but it looks great. And I kind of found myself there with this. I was like, I don't remember what the Riddler's up to anymore, but now I know it has something to do with Moldovan ancient stamps.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Which
okay.
we don't worry about it. Sooner or later, something will be labeled and you'll pick it back up. It'll be okay.
Yeah, that's the thing, is you don't have to worry
Mhm.
about what the plot is, because they're eventually going to just spell it completely out for you.
Yeah, we got back around to it. You know, it's about Moldovan stamps because this all started with the Moldovan cake explosion or something.
Explosion
The
Right.
cake
with
topper of
and then a
Uncle
riddle,
Sam. Yeah, and then the
a
riddle.
riddle on a parachute,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and the police are like, "Aha,
Yeah,
the Riddler."
and then we've got it. We're off to the races. But when the climax comes, and of course the only way to do this is laughing gas. Which, if you didn't know that nitrous oxide was laughing gas, it's labeled laughing gas
Laughing gas.
on the
Yep.
tanks. And I mean, I'm impressed with the Riddler's.
Every air vent is labeled
Yes.
as an air vent.
It's an air
Mhm.
vent, just in
Mhm.
case you weren't sure. You know, it's important. So it's not clearly not Alfred. This is just how Gotham operates.
That's
This
true.
is like their
Mhm.
culture. You
That's a good
know,
point.
Model
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
yeah. They
That's
grow. They
fine.
raise their
I
kids.
embrace label culture.
Yeah. They raise their kids to put labels on things, and then that's what they
This
always
is how
do.
we've moved into the live, laugh, love era that we're in now. As it started, we're just labeling everything.
It's like I love a live,
Mm.
laugh, love, but there's diminishing returns once you have enough of them. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, let's find something else to hang on the wall.
I
Like
did
what?
think it was funny that nobody started laughing until a joke was told. Like the gas
Yeah.
didn't kick in until they actually
They need
were
something to
triggered to
laugh
laugh.
at. That's how it works, man. Dennis has
Yeah,
to laugh
that's
at you.
yep. That's again just like having Irish police officers. That's a rule. If laughing gas is involved,
Mhm.
someone has to tell a bad joke to get a chuckle, and that is the match that lights the fire.
And then
Yeah.
everybody
And then everyone
collapses
laughs.
on the floor because that also
Yeah.
happens. You just completely lose
Yep.
it and you fall over. So then of course we have the explosion from underground, which creates a perfect square in this, which I
Mhm.
thought was phenomenal. That's really good work, pyrotechnics work there.
Yeah.
That the Riddler
Henchmen
can
know their
set. I mean, I'm
demolitions.
telling you, perfect square through the wooden floor. Like, couldn't they have just taken a chainsaw and like and been a smaller hole? But whatever. We're
Mhm.
talking about maximum damage. Want everybody to know that we're here. And then
Yep.
the Trojan horse of what was it? A woolly mammoth that
Mammoth.
Batman
I
and
was
Yeah.
gonna say
Robin,
Trojan Mammoth.
yeah, pop
Yeah.
out of, and they're like, haha, with their oxygen masks on, which say oxygen on
Oxygen.
them. Because
Mhm.
Yep.
hate to get it confused yet again.
They-
Both labels.
yeah.
I'm surprised it
They've
didn't
got
say
recreational
Batman's
ones
oxygen.
also that have
Right.
yeah, bat oxygen.
So then we have, of course, the first appearance of Pow Bam Whizap Boom all over this fight, which really just looks like some middle-aged men just making it up as they were going along. Like, I don't know how much choreography was going in here. It's like, you swing a
None.
punch.
Yeah.
It was definitely taken from
Please
the World
hurt each
Wrestling
other.
Federation. Like, whisper, I'm going to throw you into the crate. Okay. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like the worst hand-to-hand combat you'll ever see, because it's just punch,
Mhm.
Not
punch,
good.
punch, grab, punch. Like nobody knows how to throw a
Boxes.
kick. Nobody has to do like a judo throw. It's
No.
just
That's what pow and kapow and blam are
Yeah.
for, to cover up those
Yep.
not hits.
exactly.
My favorite move was Robin getting on the little cart and like scooting over and then jumping off. Like land on
Yes.
somebody. You're like, wait a minute.
Oh.
That's like off the top rope. That's Superfly Snuka just, doing it. They
Mm.
had it figured out.
It's
That's
got to be okay so that if children do it, they won't die.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yes.
fine. You'll be
Mhm.
fine. There's a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
couch cushions involved in all of this choreography.
Oh yeah.
And
Yes.
one of the last things that I really got a kick out of, I think towards the end of this, was when Riddler and Batman jump down into the hole. The cartoon zoop, the sound that it makes when they go down in
Oh
the
yeah.
ground. Of like that is just I almost decided to cap it on my system just so I had it forever. Because it really decide like it sets the tone. Like I know it's been established at this point, but like you just realize you are watching a cartoon 100%
Yeah.
come to life
Yeah.
on your screen. And I think it's clear that we all have a great love for this. This is the first time I've watched the show, and I'm just sold forever. Like I will do everything I can to show this to Sam as often as possible until he loves it. Like we're gonna go full
Yes.
Clockwork Orange on this. I'm just gonna be like, hold your eyes open. We're watching this show. No, you can't do anything else. This is
Just
our time.
remind him when the Penguin is on screen, smoking is bad because Burgess Meredith smokes constantly
Yeah.
as the Penguin,
Yeah, I mean
which is
that's
something that I forgot about. Like I knew he
Oh,
had
yeah.
the cigarette holder, but I forgot that it was lit all the
All of
time,
it's always
and there's just
smoking.
smoke coming off of it.
Everyone smoked in the 60s. I tell them that all the time. Like
It's
there was
true.
a time everybody it's fine. You know, nobody smokes
Don't worry.
anymore. Nobody. There are people that
Yeah.
smoke, but they should stop because it's bad for you. That's our anti-drug message for today's episode. But coming towards the top of the hour, are there any last minute thoughts or stuff that any of y'all want to chat about that made this show
I mean,
wonderful?
I want to talk about the fact that so we've touched on some of the villains that they had, but they didn't just pull villains from the comics. They gave us some very interesting villains like Egghead, played by Vincent Price,
Oh,
and
Mm.
King Tut is a villain in this. And like I loved all the different versions of the villains. And when you see Cesar Romero as the Joker, you will, especially in these high definition transfers that
Yup.
are on like Tubi, you will see his mustache
oh yeah.
because he
Yup.
refused to
not shave
shave
it.
it and just put
Good
makeup
enough.
over it. And it's great. Like you had the three different Catwomans because you had Julie Newmar, and then in the movie they had Lee Merriweather because if I remember right, Julie Newmar couldn't do the movie, but then
Yeah,
didn't
she
want to
had
come
some
back
sort
for
of
the
back problem at the time.
yeah, and so then didn't want to come back for the series, so that's when they brought in Eartha Kitt. So it's
Mhm.
like, and what I love too is all the different versions of these characters, the different actors that would play them. They never mention a thing.
No.
Like
Just keep
there's a
going.
couple episodes where John Aston from the Addams Family, Gomez Addams, plays the Riddler because Frank Gorshin, like, I think he was in a contract dispute or something. It's just that's who the Riddler is for that week. You know, you
He's a
have
good
like the old.
Riddler, too.
Oh yeah,
I
he's
forgot
very good. You have like the old version of Mr. Freeze back before he was given the tragic backstory. He's just a guy who lives in cold and steals diamonds. That's
Mhm.
it. That's his whole. That's the entirety of the character.
all you
But they
need.
used him like 3 different times.
So good.
It's just there's so much, so many great silly episodes of it, and I loved. And I had forgotten this show was run like I don't know if it was weekends or if it was just back to back days during the week, but it was 2 episodes a week.
Yeah.
Oh,
So they would
wow.
play an episode, and the following night they would have the conclusion. So all of them are 2-story arcs,
Mhm.
and that's why they always had the same bat time, same bat channel
Channel.
would come up because they would tell you at the end they would, and then the next night they would recap the first episode for everybody and show the next one. So I really liked that too. It's just great, and the music is fun, silly.
The intro sequence,
Great.
like I mean, we didn't even touch on the animation in the
Mhm.
intro sequence, just fantastic. Like it ripped from the comic book again.
Yep.
You know,
Oh
it
yeah.
feels like a serious. You're about to watch something fun, but it's got. I mean, they cared. It's seen in every
Mhm.
frame of the show, even the ones that are still frames for longer than they need to be, just so they can add a special effect. Which
Yes.
cracked me up. The C4 or the laser, whatever he was using to light that bomb, and they just freeze framed
Oh
him
yeah.
and drew a line to it for like about 2 or 3 seconds. I'm like, yes, this is how you
Mhm.
do special effects on a budget in the
Mhm.
60s. I got it. I walked out of this there's a lot of cinematography that you can appreciate too, with the weird angles and stuff that they did, and I
Oh,
remember
this
that from the
this
movies.
show loved Dutch angles.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
just it's so cool.
Everything is tilted.
It gives it a distinct look that's unique to it. You know, the only place you
Mhm.
see those angles in any other show is like if somebody's on an LSD trip, like in the '60s, like, and then they're just like, and they're making you nauseous. Like this was just
Which,
how the show is shot.
what the show was a
Yeah,
Yeah.
LSD trip. So
exactly. But there's a lot to it that makes you walk out into the world. I think if you're a kid, or teenager and you're watching this, it's like, holy crap, I could make stuff like this. I think that's what's fun about it. These costumes are not elaborate. You
No.
could find / make something that looks like that and make your own darn superhero show if you want to.
Mhm.
And I see stuff like this, and there's movies that I've watched before where I'm just like, that's doable, like on a budget for fun. Like you could make your own thing for YouTube if you really cared enough. Because
Yeah, the wall trick, you
yeah,
could easy, no
easy
problem.
peasy. Yeah, turn the camera sideways. Not that hard. Like
Mhm.
get some people to make sure the rope doesn't just like fall behind you. Like you pull
Yep.
on it so it looks like it's
Yep.
going the ground.
Yep.
So many
Actually,
little
I
tricks.
probably did that a few times when I was a kid.
I'm sure. Yeah.
I also love silly things like the fact that Batman and Robin will refer to each other as Batman and Robin all the time when they're in costume, but it's Bruce and Dick when they're out of costume. They never mess that up. And they never are in the Batcave without being in full costume with the
Yeah.
cowl on and the mask on.
Mhm.
Well, that's how they
Always.
get there. The
Stay
poles put them on for them, so they can't be in there.
True.
There's no
And
mechanism.
then Alfred, right, but then Alfred will come walking in and he will only refer to them as, I believe he only refers to them as Batman and Robin while
Yeah.
they're in the cave.
Yeah.
So, like,
That's a good
that
point.
distinction is always made and it's perfect.
Alfred doesn't have a pole, as you saw, because his
Nope.
name wasn't on them.
He takes the stairs like a person.
Yeah, he has to
Yes.
go down the stairs, and there's no magic suit changing machine for him, so you just have to deal with it. But anyway, I could talk about the show forever. Like it was just so much fun. I think just verdicts would watch again. Travis,
Yeah, Ben watching.
yeah, Amy,
Oh yeah.
Audie.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, easy enough. We want to hear from you guys out there in the world too. If you would watch it again, make sure you reach out to us on Those Days Show on Twitter and Those Were the Days podcast on at Gmail with your thoughts on the show, because we just love to hear it. Even though we've already recorded this thing, I just want to chat and talk Batman more, because this is just a really fun ride. But so that's it for me. But next week, we're being hosted by Amy. Amy, what are we watching for next Monday?
So I have picked for my pilot Doogie Howser, MD.
Oh
Now,
man,
Yes.
I will tell you, I have not rewatched this yet in preparation for the show. Like I didn't vet this. But as I am pretty far down the gifted child to dysfunctional adult track, this was a big one for me when I was a kid. So I'm pretty excited to go back. I'm fairly certain that my father does still refer to Neil Patrick Harris as Doogie Howser exclusively. Even
That's
though
kind
that
of a demarcation
definitely
line. You can
Yeah.
tell how old someone is by if they refer to him as Doogie Howser.
he is
Yeah.
Dr. Horrible, and we all know it.
He was Doogie Howser for me for a long time. Even Starship Troopers, I'm like, that's Doogie Howser.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be good to see him in his prime. Actually, not his prime. I don't know what his prime is. He's always
He might be
primed.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, NPH is
Yeah.
always now. White Castle gave him a boost that he needed at the time.
Yep.
Once you saw him
Yep.
in Harold
for
and
sure.
Kumar, it was like, okay, that guy can do things. Where's he at? You know he's got talent. Let's bring him back in. But no, I'm super pumped for that. That's going to be an absolute blast. Again, if you want to be involved with the show and share your thoughts, you can always do so at Those Were the Days podcast or Those Were the Days show at gmail.com or Those Days. Wait, is it Those Were the Days podcast? I've confused myself. What's our email?
Those were the days show at gmail.com or on Twitter at those days show.
Thank you, Travis. See, Travis is the marketing
There we
professional
go.
around here. He knows what's going on. But yeah, we'd love to hear from you. We had a blast watching Batman. Looking forward to Doogie Howser. And with that, we'll see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great evening,
Citizen.
citizen. As he forgets
Old
to
chum.
play the music properly. There we go.